Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Tim, the Powerful Man Matthews. What's going on, brother?
Yeah, Zoom woman. Can we turn that voice off? It says this meeting is being recorded.
For those guys listening, obviously Tim lives in Wales right now, and I live in the West Coast of the United States. So we record these podcasts via Zoom, and that way Tim and I get to see each other. We always chat, and it's always usually a little trash talking that goes on between recordings. So when you hit record, for those that probably everybody listening to this on Zoom, there's a woman's voice that's very robotic that says this recording started, recording stopped. So it makes me chuckle a little bit because it also caught you off
Never
guard.
used to be there though, did it?
No, that's a newer one. Well, now they have the little sign that starts at the beginning where you accept whether you're going to allow you are going to allow a recording or leave the meeting.
Wow.
So anyway, that's a digression and a funny little aside. So Tim, what I want to talk about today is a problem a lot of guys have. And we've heard this talked about time and time again. And that is a problem when their wife is always late. So an example could be, right, and I've experienced this before myself. And then we're going to talk about towards the end of this is how do you deal with this as a man? What's really going on behind the scenes and how do you deal with it? So let me set the scene. I'm sure your partner, Amelia, is always on time. And so you've probably never experienced this issue. But for some of us guys, right, our wife can be incessantly late. So you're getting ready, and maybe it's a work meeting or a trip, or maybe you're going to the movies or what have you. And you always find yourself showing up 30, 45 minutes late to whatever venue you're going to be. And as you're getting in late, so I'll use a work dinner party, right? You show up late, and you're angry and you're upset. Your wife's upset now at this point, and you walk to the table where, I don't know, 10 other people are sitting down and they've already started drinks and appetizers and such. And you're arriving there late, and it's hard to find a seat, and it's a little bit more disjointed, and you're trying to join the conversation, and you're in the state of just disconnect and upset, right? Because here you are, you were ready on time, had the car ready to go. And yet again, for the umpteenth time, so 100th time or whatever it is, your wife decides that she needs longer to get ready or whatever it is. And now you're late, and you're finding yourself fumbling through, making excuses and apologizing to people. And you and your wife are pissed at each other because you're coming in late to this party. Have you ever experienced anything like that?
Yes. Have you met Amelia?
Amelia is either in the room or she listens to the podcast. So a lot of guys do this. Another story I heard of a guy who was like, look, I love going to the movies. My wife loves going to the movies. But then every time we go to the movies, I want to be there before the previews so we get a good seat right in the center and so we can have a great experience. But what happens is inevitably, I plan the date night. We're getting ready for the movies, and we show up 15 minutes into the movies already started. And now it's pitch dark black. We have to find our seats. We're always that person interrupting the movie, trying to get through people's legs so we can find a seat. And they're usually crappy angles. And we've already missed the premise of the movie. My wife and I are disconnected. We're pissed at each other. And after that, we go to dinner, and I'm just telling her, look, you're taking too long to get ready. This is ridiculous. I mean, your hair looks fine, but I don't really care about it. I just, and then the argument ensues. So what I want to talk about is how can guys, first of all, what's happening and how can guys handle this? Any experience that you've had with this in particular?
Yes. Yes, lots. And, sometimes it triggers me. Sometimes I deal with it. I'm definitely not perfect with it. But yeah, anyway, I won't go into what I do because we're going to go there, I guess.
So I'll talk about it because this is a big trigger for me. And it is in business, right? And so in business, this applies too, guys. So you can use this not only with your partner, but use it with your kids and business and other things. So what's happening here, guys, let's first uncover it because most people don't think about it, is not only is your wife late, but you're late. And you're not upset that your wife is late. You're upset that you are late to the function. You're upset because she has made you late, right? Now you are late to the movie. You are late to the dinner. And in business, you're late to the meeting or the meeting isn't starting on time. That's where the trigger happens. That's where the upset really occurs, right? You don't get upset at somebody, at yourself, somebody else for being late to a function per se. Usually it's you're upset at them making you late or starting things later and pushing you back or making you wait for them, right? So in business meetings, or any meetings with a powerful man, we do our best to start on time, and not everybody in the organization is always on time. So when I'm running a meeting, I usually do it my best to start it within 1 minute of the original start time, regardless of who's there, because it is such a trigger for me. But that's the agreement. We had a meeting at 8 a.m. or whenever it is. That's when we are going to start, right? And I will just continue as if. So the first thing to recognize is the fact that your upset, your anger isn't regarding your wife's routine to get ready. It isn't regarding her being late to the movies. It's regarding her making you late or them making you wait, right? Which can be a sign of disrespect for a lot of people. It is for me, right? So that's where the upset occurs. Once we know that, we can start laying some ground rules, right? Now we can start making some ground rules. Before I go in how to do this effectively, let's talk about how most of us do it and how certainly I used to do it. And maybe Tim, you can relate to this too. What I used to do with my wife is I'd be something like, come on, what's taking so long? Let's go. We got to go. We got to go. The movie's starting, or whatever it may have been. And I would rush her. I would push her, and push her. Now, if you have kids, you know that any attention is good attention to a kid, right? Or any human being. So negative attention, when you do it that way, when I was rushing my wife, I was doing multiple things. One is I was reinforcing her behavior subconsciously because I was giving her attention, right, in that moment. Two, I was rushing her. And when you rush a woman, you put her into a masculine energetic state, not a feminine energetic state, right? Femininity is free flowing, right? Where masculinity is more rigid. And the third thing I was doing was pissing her off, right? I was pissing her off. And so that would cause and ensue a fight in distance, right? Going through there. So that's what's occurring there. And so the way that we can stop that and prevent that is by setting some boundaries. And Tim, you're amazing at setting boundaries with, and teaching the guys how to set boundaries. And it can look something like this. Hey, babe, I get triggered. I get upset when I end up being late for the dinner, the movie, the meeting, whatever it is, fill in the blank. And it just doesn't work for me. So how can we make it so we're always on time or early? Right. And then she can answer. Now she could push back, but you come at this from an energetic, loving state, right? A loving space and a space of inquiry. How can we make this work together? Right. And then you give her a couple mulligans. Let's say it's 2. And I would do this in business meetings too. Hey, we agreed to be here at 8 o'clock. Let's do that. I don't like waiting. If you're going to be late, let me know and I'll show up late. Right. So you give them a couple mulligans in there. Now, if it keeps happening, that means they're disrespecting your boundaries, right? And when they start disrespecting your boundaries, now you can say, look, the next time this happens, it's really important for me to be there on time. And if you're not available or ready, I'll just say it's at 6 p.m. to go to the movies that starts, then I'm just going to have to go and you can just meet me there, right? If that's the way you want to do it. Now, you want to hold this for like the last resort, guys, right? Because it's kind of an ultimatum. Like, hey, this is what's going to happen. And again, you got to do this from a loving space. If you're angry, you're yelling, doesn't work. But if you do this from a loving space and holding space for yourself, like a boundary for yourself, like, look, we've talked about this before. You said that, the next, for dinner dates, I told you it's really important to me that if we have reservations with friends at 6 p.m., that we're going to be there on time. And you agreed to do that. And we missed the last one. And here we are again. If this happens again, then you can just meet me at the restaurant because I hate being late, right? Now, let's say it's the next dinner date. comes and 5:45 rolls around and it's going to take you 15 minutes to get to the restaurant and your wife's still doing her hair, you just grab the car keys and you go. That's leave a note. Leave a note. Hey, I waited for you as long as I could, but per our agreement and discussion, I'll just meet you at the restaurant. Look forward to seeing you. Right? Make it nice. But that's going to send a very solid message that you're serious about your boundaries. And you could do the same in business meetings. And we've had this conversation. I've had this conversation with several people in business where it's like, look, if we're not going to meet at 8:00, you're going to be late. Let's just change the time, or I'm not going to show up, or I'm just going to start the meeting without you. Right. And if those boundaries aren't honored, it's up to me to carry through. If I don't carry through with what I'm going to say, right, starting meetings on time or ending them on time, as an example in business, or my wife wanting to be there on time, if I don't honor those boundaries, they're not going to respect those boundaries, just as kids would do, right? So this is a big trigger I've heard many, many times from a lot of the guys in the movement about their wife always being late. They're always late to things and they always have to make excuses, which causes stress, anxiety, shame, and guilt, causes fights between their wife. And ultimately, the guys cave in, end up always being late, and end up being kind of like a yes man. And they fall into the beta mode at this point, right? And this can go the other way, by the way. You guys could be the one that's always late. And your wife should be doing this for you. But since this show is The Powerful Man, we're talking about how this relates to men.
Yeah, the way that I've tripped up with this in the past is you said something, it's got to come from a loving place, which is easier said than done sometimes because you can be super triggered, right? And you're like, right. And you know to convey what your boundary and stand firm from that place. But yeah, for me, that's where I've fallen down. And then the ultimatum can sound like a threat. And that isn't good.
No.
That is not good for me anyway, in my experience. So yeah, I just want to emphasize that point. It's really important to understand yourself and understand what the trigger is, like you said at the beginning, and what's really going on for you. So that when it comes up, and this is, one of the first things we take the men through in the activation method is the shadow stickman exercise, where you really get clear on a lot of your triggers and how they show up, and what then causes you to fall into what we call that shadow stickman, which you may have traits of being the nice guy, may have traits of lashing out, whatever it is. And that's really helpful for the men because it makes it easier for them to spot the blueprint. It's kind of when a trigger shows up, it always has a signature. So a signature, just to over elaborate, would be you'll feel a certain way, you'll act a certain way, your body language will be a certain way. Anyway, get clear on the signature and what really is going on for you. And that's going to help you to remain calmer when it comes up and detach from it so that you can then maintain your boundary in a loving way.
Yeah. And so early on in my marriage, I was not that guy, the loving way guy. I was, and Tim, you know me well enough to know that on time is early for me. And you and I have had several conversations around that for our own meetings, right? And I haven't always set those boundaries in a loving way. I've tried all kinds of ways. It's usually pretty firm, but at the same time with my wife, I know it doesn't work, right? She'll say, "Oh, you're hurrying me. You're rushing me." Now that puts me in my masculine. My wife knows enough about this. But then when I set boundaries from a loving place of like, look, it's really important to me that we show up on time to a meeting with somebody. It's really important to me to do it. And last few times you've agreed to it, but it hasn't worked. So if it starts happening, I'm just going to have to take care of me and make sure that I get there on time and you can meet me there. And that'd be awesome. We can have separate cars. That's cool. And I won't say it like that, but I'll go through it in some kind of way where I'm framing it as like, this is what's important to me. And if you can't honor that, then we need to go our separate ways. Right. And that brings up a discussion because what's going to come up for her You're going to get pushback on this, guys, if you do it this way. If it gets to that ultimatum point, and you got to wait, you got to have some mulligans in there, and you have to have agreement. She has to have buy-in with this. You can't give the ultimatum if she doesn't have buy-in, right? She has to agree that, okay, it's important to you. I agree. I'll make sure I'm on time. If she disagrees, then you have a discussion about that. And then you can decide what you want to do. But if she agrees and then she violates your boundary, so to speak, right? Again, you could be the guy violating the boundaries. So, check yourself. But if she violates your boundary, then you have to call it out. Because what you don't want to do, right, is just go, fine, I'm just going to be the nice guy. I'm going to shut my mouth. I'm not going to say anything. I'll just wait. And then she gets there and you're cold and you're distant. Let's face it, guys, you're closed down because you're pissed. You're bearing it down. So you're cold and you're distant. You're driving to whatever you're going to fast because you're angry and you want to get there, right? And there's not really much dialogue. She can feel it. Now she's upset. And then you're upset because she's upset that you're upset, right? And it starts to snowball into this just shitty experience. And nobody's happy. And you're the beta because you're waiting for her. You're reacting to her. And you have made it okay for her to violate your boundaries. And that signals to her that she can violate your boundaries whenever she wants to. And you're going to do what she wants to do. At the end of the day, it's her rules that rule.
And then you get passive aggressive and
Yep.
Listen, it's okay if we drive in separate cars. That's totally cool with me.
Well, yeah. You got to have that boundary though, and you
do, yeah, you do.
And sometimes
the place that it comes from is, I think that's the real key here. If we were to pick out one key, it's that the place. Well, it's hard. The trigger is also important because that'll help you to ensure it comes from a solid place.
Yeah, you have to recognize that you have that trigger, that it's you, not her, that's triggering you. It's you being late. That's the problem, right? It's you. That's why you're upset. And, the ultimatum is a last resort, but it's there to leave a message of like, I honor my boundaries. And if that means getting there on time requires me to drive a car and you to show up separately, then so be it. Right. And this goes with kids too, right? If you set boundaries with your kids, you have to enforce them. Otherwise, the kids aren't going to know which way is right, which way is left. They're not going to know what to do. And that puts the kids in a precarious situation. Sometimes dad's yelling at me for not cleaning my room. Sometimes he doesn't care. And kids are always there to test boundaries. So are people, right? Men, you test boundaries. Women do too, right? And it happens all the time. And there's a constant jostling for position in relationships. And a lot of this happens behind the scenes. It's subconscious. Also, we're all raised differently, right? We have different meanings. For some people, showing up to a meeting at 8:00 is on time. If the meeting's at 8, some people, 8:05 is not a big deal, right? Or 8:10. Some people going to a movie and showing up 15 minutes late, no big deal. That's how I grew up. For some people, it's a major issue. So the point is to have the clarification and let your partner know what your boundaries are, come to an agreement on that, right? Get buy-in, right? Just like you with anybody else. And once there's buy-in, you got to honor your boundaries. Give some mulligans, right? It's hard for some people to change their habits. Give some mulligans in there, give some respect, but call it out, right? Call it out. And I like to try to call it out in a joking, loving way, and do it not in a passive aggressive way, but in a joking, loving way. And then you can make it a playful thing. Hey, I'm honoring my boundaries, but you can also make it a playful, teasing thing. And then it becomes almost like foreplay. And I can tell you, my wife will tell you that when I handle it that way, it's sexy, right? I'm honoring my boundaries. Therefore, I'm going to honor and respect her, be able to protect her. Because if I don't honor my boundaries, how the heck can I protect her, right? If I don't honor myself. Secondarily, if I make it playful and funny, then we're giggling and laughing about it. So there's two things that stack onto each other that make it for a sexy, loving experience. And my wife will test me. She will test me to make sure that boundary is still there. And I push back. And if I give in, it becomes a problem, right? Obviously, there's circumstances. There's special things that come into play. But on a regular basis, you got to be able to judge between a test and something that's really going on that's causing an issue.
Yeah, good point.
So guys, here's what you want you to do. If you're finding yourself, your wife being late, or maybe it's somebody that you work with on Zoom meetings, or maybe it's somebody else. First thing I want you to do is go ahead and let them know what it is you desire. What is your boundary? Hey, this doesn't work for me. Then get buy-in. The way I do that is, how can we make this work? Or can we make this work? Right? Assuming you get buy-in and you both agree that, great, we're going to start on time, or we're going to show up on time, or whatever it may be. Right? And sometimes somebody, just a caveat, somebody might say, hey, look, just tell me it's 30 minutes earlier, right? Just, basically lie to me. Some people like that. And I've been told that by people. And you can agree to do that. Sometimes I'll say, no, you're an adult. You figure it out. Get the buy-in, and then allow a few mulligans, but hold on to your boundaries. And every time that boundary is violated, just bring it up. Say, hey, we agreed on this. What am I missing? All right. What am I missing? And she may say, I just forgot, or geez, I was running late, or man, I just really want to look beautiful for you. There's all kinds of reasons. Say, that's fantastic, or I totally understand. And these are the boundaries we agreed upon. And then you move from there. And it's a last resort. You throw out the ultimatum of like, look, we agreed upon this. Next time this happens, I'll just meet you at the party. And that way it allows you to take your time getting ready, and I get to be there at the time that's effective for me. But the key is, if you do that ultimatum, you gotta pull the trigger on it. Gotta pull the trigger. All right, gentlemen, that's a wrap for us here at the Powerful Man Show. As always, take some action and set your boundaries. Have an amazing day.